Have you ever found yourself thinking that certain things are permanent, that time heals everything, that love can fade, that memories are just fragments of a distant past? What if I told you that true love never dies, even when life forces us to believe otherwise? An unexpected visit completely changed my view on this, and maybe the same could happen to you. What would you do if, in an unexpected moment, something or someone from your past returned, reopening wounds you thought were healed? And if this visit brought not only pain, but also the revelation that certain feelings, no matter how much we try to hide them, always find a way to resurface? Let's discover together how love can be stronger than time and circumstances.
Kate was in her home, a cozy two-story house in Chicago, surrounded by tall trees and colorful flowers she had cultivated herself. The morning sun filtered through the windows, illuminating the walls filled with pictures and memories. That morning, she decided to organize the boxes of old photos that had been piled up in the corner of the attic, a project she had been putting off for years. As she opened the first box, the smell of aged paper enveloped her, bringing back a wave of memories from her youth. Gently, Kate took out the photos and began spreading them out on the kitchen table. There were images of parties, trips, and simple moments, but one caught her attention immediately: a photograph of Elliot, her first love. He had a radiant smile, with hair tousled by the wind. His gaze captured the essence of a time when everything seemed possible. Kate's heart raced, and a mixture of longing and pain washed over her. 15 years had passed since they parted, but the memory of him still held immense power. "How can you still affect me like this?" Kate murmured to herself as she caressed the edge of the photo. Memories of shared laughter, whispered promises under the moonlight, flooded her mind. She remembered the last time she saw him, the way everything fell apart between them, and felt a pang of sadness. The front door opened, and her friend Clara walked in, interrupting her thoughts. "Hey, Kate, what are you up to?" Clara asked with a curious smile. "Organizing old photos. I found this one," Kate replied, holding up Elliot's photo. Clara leaned in to look and immediately recognized the face. "Wow, Elliot, what are you planning to do? Reminisce about the good times or torture yourself?" "Maybe a little of both," Kate admitted, laughing nervously. "It's complicated, you know. He was such an important part of my life." "Do you still think about him?" Clara asked, with a serious look. "Sometimes. It's hard not to remember. Chicago is full of memories of him," Kate sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "But life went on, right? I moved on." "Yes, but that doesn't mean you have to forget completely. Sometimes things need to be revisited so we can truly move on," Clara said, sitting next to her. "Have you ever thought about what it would be like to see him again?" The idea of a reunion made Kate's stomach churn. "No, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that." Meanwhile, in New York, Elliot received news that made him pause for a moment. He was in his apartment, surrounded by a pile of papers, when the phone rang. It was a call from his mother. Elliot's grandmother, who had always had a close relationship with Kate, had passed away. "I'm so sorry, son. I know you were very fond of her," his mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I loved her very much," Elliot replied, looking out the window at the bustling city below. The pain of loss hit him, but what made him even more pensive was the memory of Kate. "I think it's time to go back to Chicago." He got up and started packing his things. Memories of Kate, of the moments they shared in that small town, flooded his mind. The thought of seeing her again unsettled him, but there was a feeling that he couldn't let this opportunity pass. The past was complicated, but maybe it was time to face what was left behind. The next day, as the city prepared for a local celebration, Kate was feeling nervous in her room. She looked in the mirror, adjusting her hair and trying to control the anxiety. The city was vibrant, full of laughter and music, but her mind was far away, lost in memories of Elliot. "What if he doesn't feel the same? What if everything I thought was special meant nothing to him?" she thought, biting her lip. The day promised to be a challenge, but at the same time, there was a small spark of hope. Maybe we can talk and finally understand everything," she whispered to herself, even though she wasn't sure if that would really happen. With one last look in the mirror, she took a deep breath and decided she was ready to face whatever fate had in store. The city, with its festive colors and sounds, seemed to promise new possibilities, But the truth about what existed between her and Elliot was yet to come. The local cafe, with its walls adorned with old photos of Chicago, was full of people. But for Kate and Elliot, it felt like time had stopped. The vibrant atmosphere and lively conversations filling the space couldn't dissipate the tension hanging between them. Kate sat at a table near the window, her eyes lost on the street while her heart raced in her chest. Elliot walked in, his presence immediately catching her attention. He looked different, but at the same time, so familiar. "Hi, Kate," he said, his voice a mix of hesitation and nostalgia. "Hi, Elliot," she replied, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. He sat down across from her, and an awkward silence settled between them. Kate looked at the menu, but the words danced in her mind, unable to settle. Finally, she looked into his eyes, which were full of an intensity that made her feel exposed. "So, it's been a while, hasn't it?" he began, breaking the ice. 15 years, Kate replied, her voice almost a whisper. 15 years since you decided to leave. The mention of the past brought a wave of emotions to the surface. Elliot frowned, his expression filled with regret. "I didn't want things to end that way," he said, sincerity in his eyes. "But you know how it was. I had my own demons." "Demons? You chose to leave everything behind, Elliot. I wasn't one of those demons," she said, a little more firmly. The words came out with a pain she couldn't avoid. "I know, and I'm sorry for that. I was lost," he replied, his voice choked. "I was an idiot." The atmosphere between them, which had been tense before, began to shift into something more complex, filled with hurt and understanding. Kate looked out the window again, watching a group of young people laughing and having fun. "Chicago has changed a lot," she commented, trying to steer the conversation away from her own broken heart. "Yes, but some things remain the same," he said, his eyes fixed on her. "Like this cafe. I always loved coming here." She smiled slightly, remembering so many afternoons spent there with him. "And our conversations about everything and nothing," she said, almost dreaming. "I miss that," Elliot confessed, his voice soft. "I miss us." Kate closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to feel the pain of longing, but soon reminded herself of why they had drifted apart. "But we're not the same anymore, Elliot. What happened between us? It's not easy to just forget." He nodded, his gaze somber. "I know, but maybe we can find a way to move forward together, even if it's just as friends." "Friends," she repeated, the word coming out heavily. "It's a tempting idea, but what if the pain is too strong? What if the memory of what we lost keeps us from moving on?" Elliot leaned forward, his sincerity evident. "I can't promise it will be easy, Kate, but I want to try. I still care about you, more than I can express." His gaze made her feel a mix of hope and fear. The past was woven into every word, but there was also an opportunity for rebuilding, even if just a small one. Maybe we can start slowly," she suggested, and a faint light of hope shone in her eyes. "Slowly," he agreed, a shy smile appearing on his face. After a few moments of silence, Kate decided she needed some time to process everything. "I need to step out for a bit, Elliot. I need to walk and think." "Of course," he said, a bit disappointed but understanding. "Just know that I'll be here." She stood up, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. "Thank you for coming, even though it was complicated," she said before walking away. As she walked through the streets of Chicago, each step seemed to bring up a new memory, a new pain she was still trying to understand. The smiles of passersby contrasted with the internal storm she felt. Kate wondered if there was room for love between them again, or if the past had created insurmountable barriers. The echo of laughter and memories followed her as she struggled to find her own answers. The next day, the sun shone brightly over Chicago, illuminating the streets Kate knew so well. She found herself in a state of anticipation and nervousness. That morning, as she brewed coffee in the kitchen, her thoughts were fixed on Elliot. The meeting at the cafe still reverberated in her mind, and the tension would not leave her in peace. Then, unexpectedly, the phone rang. It was a message from Elliot. "Hi, Kate. Would you like to take a walk in the park later? It would be nice to reminisce about the old times." She hesitated for a moment. The park was a place filled with memories, both good and bad. But at the same time, the idea of spending more time with him ignited a spark of hope in her chest. With a trembling hand, she replied, "Sure, Elliot. At 4 p.m.? The afternoon seemed endless as Kate got ready. She chose a light dress, one she knew he always liked. Looking in the mirror, she saw a woman slightly more mature, but with the same dreamy eyes he had known. When she arrived at the park, her heart raced as she spotted Elliot. He was leaning against a tree, with a smile that made her feel as if no time had passed. "Hi, Kate," he said, his eyes shining with the light of the setting sun. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, Elliot. You look good too," she replied, trying to contain her shyness. The air was charged with a mixture of nostalgia and expectation. They started walking together, and the conversation flowed slowly like a stream emptying into a lake. "How have you been doing in New York?" Kate asked, trying to break the ice. "Oh, it's an incredible city, full of opportunities, but also very lonely. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of Chicago," Elliot confessed, his gaze turning to the horizon. "And you?" Kate felt a chill in her stomach. "I miss the city too. It's strange how memories can be so vivid, even after so many years." As they walked, they shared stories about their lives over the past 15 years. Kate talked about her work as a teacher, her achievements and challenges, while Elliot described the hustle and pressures of his corporate career. "As much as I've accomplished some things, I feel like I've failed in other areas, especially in my personal life," he admitted, looking at her with sincerity. "You're not alone, Elliot. We all deal with our battles," Kate replied, lightly touching his arm. "I've been through tough times too, but I've always tried to find a reason to smile." The conversation flowed like a river, and the barriers that existed between them began to dissolve. When they reached a small clearing, a place they used to visit in their youth, the atmosphere seemed charged with energy. There, under the shade of a large tree, they paused. "Do you remember the day we came here, and you taught me to ride a bike?" Kate asked, a nostalgic smile on her lips. Elliot laughed. "And you fell and got hurt, but even so, you were so determined to learn." "That's true," she laughed too, "but you were always there to help me up." The atmosphere between them subtly changed, and a silence laden with meaning settled. Kate looked into Elliot's eyes and felt a deep connection, as if all the years of separation had not existed. "Elliot, do you still believe it's possible to start over?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I want to believe," he replied, his voice soft and firm. "I want to believe there's still time for us." At that moment, they found themselves at the same point of emotional intensity, and a wave of memories enveloped them. And suddenly, everything seemed clearer. They were standing at the spot where they used to kiss, a reference point of a love that still lingered in their hearts. Their gazes deepened, and Kate felt her face flush. Elliot took a step forward, and without thinking, she did the same. The space between them disappeared, and in an impulse, their mouths met in a gentle kiss, filled with promises and longings. The world around them vanished, and for a brief moment, it was just them, two lovers reunited by fate, ready to explore what the future might bring. The sun was already beginning to set when Kate and Elliot arrived at her parents' old house. The smell of aged wood and the sound of the wind whispering through the surrounding trees created a nostalgic atmosphere. The house, now abandoned, seemed to be the guardian of so many memories, some sweet and others bitter. Kate hesitated at the door, her heart racing with a mix of anxiety and longing. "Are you ready?" Elliot asked, noticing her hesitation. "I'm not sure," Kate replied, looking down at the ground where some dry leaves had accumulated. "It's been so long since I've been here." "We can just go to the backyard if you prefer," he suggested, trying to ease the tension. "No, let's go in." Kate's determination arose, and she gently pushed the door, which creaked as it opened. The interior was covered in dust, but the furniture was still in place, as if time had stopped. They entered together, and Kate ran her hand over an old table, feeling the texture of the wood under her fingers. The memories began to flow. "Do you remember when we used to play hide and seek here?" Kate asked, a nostalgic smile appearing on her face. "Of course. You always hid behind the couch and laughed when I tried to find you," Elliot laughed, his voice echoing softly in the room. Kate looked at him, the sparkle in her eyes revealing how much those moments still mattered. "And your shout when you finally found me," she said, laughing. "I thought I was an excellent hunter," he joked, and they both laughed, the tension of the past seeming to dissipate, if only momentarily. As they explored the dusty rooms, Kate found a door leading to the basement. Curious, she pulled the handle and descended the wooden stairs. Elliot followed her, intrigued. The basement was full of boxes and old objects. In the corner, a cardboard box caught Kate's attention. Opening it, she found a pile of yellowed letters. "Look at this," she exclaimed, carefully holding the letters. "Our love letters." Elliot approached, his eyes shining with the discovery. "We should read them," he suggested, a youthful enthusiasm in his voice, as if they were traveling back in time. They sat on the basement floor, surrounded by the shadows of the past. Kate began reading one of the letters aloud, and nostalgia filled the air. "Dear Elliot, I can't stop thinking about you. Every time I look at the sky, I remember our promise to be together forever." Kate's voice trembled slightly, and she looked at Elliot, who was absorbed, listening to every word. "I remember that letter," he commented, a smile on his lips. "It was such a naive phase, wasn't it?" "Yes, but it was also full of hope." Kate took a deep breath, holding back a tear that threatened to fall. "It's funny how time changes things." "And how we change too," Elliot replied, taking Kate's hand. "But some things never change, like what we feel for each other." The letters contained promises and declarations of love, and with each reading, laughter and tears emerged. Kate read a passage where Elliot described how he dreamed of taking her on a trip around the world. He laughed as he remembered, and soon the laughter turned into a silence laden with emotion. "I miss this," Elliot said, his voice soft. "Us." "I do too," Kate replied, her voice low, almost a whisper. "But what if it all hurts again?" Elliot looked her in the eyes, his expression filled with sincerity. "If it hurts again, we'll face it together. I don't want life to separate us anymore." The atmosphere between them was charged with expectation. It was as if, at that moment, everything that had happened between them was being put into perspective. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but the hope for a different future was beginning to take shape. As they left the basement, the sky was already dark, and the stars were starting to shine. They headed to a local restaurant, a place that had always been special to them. As they waited for the food, the conversation flowed naturally, as if no time had passed. "What do you hope for the future?" Elliot asked, looking into Kate's eyes, which reflected the restaurant's lights. I hope we can rediscover what we have together, that we're not stuck in what happened before, but open to what can still happen," Kate replied, feeling the tension dissolve. Elliot held her hand, his eyes fixed on hers. "Do you still believe in true love?" he asked, the seriousness in his voice making Kate's heart race. She hesitated for a moment, but the sincerity in his words encouraged her. "I want to believe, and maybe with you I can." The dinner continued with laughter and confidences, but deep in their hearts, both knew they were about to cross a new threshold. Their story could have many twists, but at that moment, they were just happy to be together again. Kate was sitting at the kitchen table, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. Her heart was beating irregularly. The previous day had been a mix of laughter and tears, and now, thinking about the words she had said to Elliot, she felt vulnerable. He had looked into her eyes, a glimmer of hope reflecting his sincerity, and she knew there was something more between them, something that defied time and the pain of the past. "I still have feelings for you, Elliot," she had confessed, her voice trembling. "But I don't want to get hurt again." Elliot, with a serious expression, had moved closer. "I promise this time will be different, Kate. If you give me a chance, I'll win your heart back. I'm here to stay." She remembered the intensity of those moments, the way he looked at her, as if he wanted to imprint every detail in his memory. However, insecurities haunted her. And now, as the morning sun streamed through the window, bringing light to her home, she felt a shadow hanging over her heart. The phone rang, pulling her out of her reverie. "Hello?" she answered, still with her mind on Elliot. "Kate, it's Clara. You won't believe what I heard." Her best friend's voice sounded nervous and urgent. "What happened?" Kate frowned, worried. "Elliot's ex-husband is spreading terrible rumors about him. He says Elliot is a liar and no good. You need to be careful," Clara said, the concern clear in every word. Kate's mind spun. Those words were like a bucket of cold water. Elliot had never mentioned anything about a problematic ex-husband. What should she believe? The trust that was beginning to form between them was now threatened by malicious rumors. I need to talk to him, she decided, already getting up and grabbing her purse. The truth was that, as much as she wanted to believe in Elliot, doubts were starting to grow like weeds in her heart. That morning, the sky was cloudy, and the city seemed to reflect the confusion in her mind. When Kate arrived at the hotel where Elliot was staying, her heart was pounding. He was waiting for her in the lobby, and his smile faded as he noticed her worried expression. "Kate, what's wrong?" he asked, his eyes widening. "We need to talk. It's serious," she said, pulling him to a more secluded corner. "Clara told me about the rumors your ex-husband is spreading." Elliot seemed to shrink. "Oh no," he murmured, running his hand through his hair. "I knew this could happen. Is it true? Is he really a problem?" Kate asked, the tension rising between them. Elliot sighed deeply, the anguish evident in his face. "Yes, he was a toxic relationship. I distanced myself from him years ago, but he still tries to hurt me. The last thing I want is for you to get involved in this." "But how can you be sure they're just lies?" Kate questioned, her voice trembling. "I want to believe you, but all this is very confusing. I can't change what he says, Kate, but I can show you who I really am. He's just trying to bring me down because he knows I'm happy now, and that consumes him." The sincerity in Elliot's eyes made her hesitate, but the insecurity still hung in the air. "I just don't want to get hurt again," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand. I don't want you to suffer because of my past. But I'm a different man now. I'm here for you, not for him." Elliot took a step forward, his hand seeking hers. "Trust me." Kate looked at their intertwined hands. The connection was still there, as strong as ever, but doubts surrounded her like shadows. Taking a deep breath, she decided she needed more time to process everything, but she also knew she couldn't let the rumors determine her future. "I'll think about it, Elliot." "I need some time," she said, withdrawing her hand. He nodded, understanding. "I'm here, Kate. When you're ready, I'll be waiting." As she walked away, Kate's heart was divided. She wanted to believe that true love could overcome any obstacle, but the uncertainties about Elliot's past left her in a state of confusion. What would it take for her to trust again? The answer was still beyond her reach, but the search for the truth was beginning to intensify in her heart. Kate was sitting at her desk, her mind buzzing with the new information she had discovered about Elliot's ex-husband. The soft morning light filtered through the window, but her mind was far from the tranquility the scene suggested. She looked at her phone, hesitating before sending a message to Elliot. Curiosity consumed her, and the urgency to clarify the situation pushed her forward. Finally, she decided to write, "Elliot, we need to talk. I found out some things about your ex-husband." His response was quick. "I'm on my way. Let's meet at the cafe where we met for the first time, okay?" Kate's heart raced. The cafe had been the setting for so many memories, both good and bad. A part of her wanted to avoid that place, but another part knew that was where everything had begun. When she arrived at the cafe, Elliot was already there, nervous, fidgeting with his hands as he waited. Kate sat down across from him and noticed the dark circles under his eyes, a clear sign of the stress he had been facing. "What did you find out?" he asked, his voice low and tense. I talked to some people and found out that your ex-husband has a history of inappropriate behavior. He not only spread rumors about you, but was also involved in several harassment situations with others. He seems to have a pattern," Kate explained, her voice trembling slightly as she opened up about the situation. Elliot looked at her, confused and relieved at the same time. "So it's not just me? He really is a dangerous person?" "Yes, I didn't know he had this kind of behavior. We need to take this seriously. We can't let him continue to harm others," Kate replied, determined. "We should go to the police, present everything you have and what I found out." Elliot nodded, the anguish in his gaze mixing with a new hope. "You're right. We can't let him continue to threaten us like this. Let's do it." The conversation continued with practical details and confused emotions. They decided to meet with a lawyer before filing the report to have proper legal support. The weight of the situation seemed lighter now that they were together, fighting for a common cause. After a few hours of discussing the best strategies, they went to the police station. The atmosphere was cold and impersonal, but their determination was palpable. Kate held Elliot's hand, and that seemed to give them both strength. When they were finally called to speak with an officer, Kate noticed how nervous Elliot was, but also how resolute. "We're here to report a case of harassment and defamation," Kate began, her voice firm. "We need you to hear our story." The officer took notes as they recounted Elliot's ex-husband's abusive behavior and the evidence they had gathered. With each word, Kate felt the burden lift a little more. It was as if, by exposing the truth, they were beginning to free themselves from the chains of the past. After a few hours of testimonies and forms, the police promised to investigate thoroughly and take the necessary measures. As they left the station, a new sense of relief filled the air. Kate looked at Elliot and smiled, a smile that said more than 1,000 words. "We did it, Elliot. Now the truth is being heard." He pulled her close and hugged her, a gesture full of gratitude and understanding. "I don't know what I would do without you, Kate. You're my strength." The moment was interrupted by Elliot's phone ringing. He looked at the screen and frowned. "It's from the police. It seems they have news." Kate felt a chill in her stomach as Elliot answered. The conversation was brief, but Elliot's expression quickly changed from worry to relief. "He was arrested, Kate. They found enough evidence to detain him." The news enveloped them in a mix of emotions. Kate felt a wave of relief and happiness, but also deep discontent for everything Elliot had been through. "We're finally free," she whispered, and then, without thinking, she leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was passionate, full of promises and renewal. It was the kind of kiss that spoke of the future, of a fresh start they both longed for. When they pulled away, their gazes met, and there, in that moment, Kate and Elliot knew that despite everything they had faced, they were ready to build a new story together. Now that we've explored the profound impact of an unexpected visit and how it can reveal that love never dies, it's time to reflect on your own life. Have you ever had a reunion that changed your perspective? How have these experiences shaped your view of love and relationships? Sometimes, the most valuable lessons come from the most surprising moments. Think about how you can apply this renewed vision of love in your own relationships and challenges. Take the opportunity and don't forget to click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. In my opinion, this is one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you like the one you just heard, you'll undoubtedly love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.